Good afternoon, good evening, hello, welcome. Welcome, everyone. My name is Cameron Bailey. I'm the artistic director here at TIFF. I'm glad to see all of you here for the new film by Jason Reitman, The Frontrunner. To begin, I want to acknowledge where we are, the land we're on tonight. This is the treaty territory of the Mississaugas of the New Credit and the traditional territory of the Haudenosaunee, the Anishinaabe, and Huron-Wendat First Nations. They've been on this land, they've been looking after this land for thousands and thousands of years, and we are grateful to be working in this community. Have you been to the Toronto International Film Festival before? Yes. All right. So you know we have a prize here. It's called the Grolsch People's Choice Award, and you know who votes for it? You do. That's exactly right. So the way to do it is you go online to tiff.net/vote. You can do it on your phone, not during the movie, but you can do it on your phone, and please vote for the films of your choice. Big thanks to Sony Pictures Releasing for providing us with this film. And massive thanks to Mr. Jason Reitman for coming back to Toronto once again to the Ryerson Theatre. The Ryerson Theatre is Jason Reitman's second home. You know, we tried at a certain point to pry him somewhere else. What about Roy Thompson Hall? How do you feel about the Elgin? No, the Ryerson. He loves this place, this audience, the vibe in this room. This is where he always wants to be. We played Juno in the Ryerson Theatre. We played Up in the Air in the Ryerson Theatre. Jason is a filmmaker often known for his humor, but what I am most struck by is his curiosity about human beings, what makes us tick, and his curiosity about movies as well. This man is a cinephile. He knows cinema inside out, all over the world. He watches widely. He understands how the form of a film affects how it works on you. And he's adopted a new style here, which I found really fascinating when I first saw this movie. And it's a fascinating story as well. And he's got a great actor, Mr. Hugh Jackman, in the lead of this film. So the combination was kind of irresistible. He's here to introduce it to you tonight. Please join me in welcoming Jason Reitman.
That was lovely. Thank you. Hey guys, how you doing? Oh wow, I have so many fond memories in this room, and my only regrets are the films that didn't get to premiere here. So thank you so much for coming out to see the movie night. Thank you, Cameron, for those lovely words. I want to start by thanking Tom Rothman and Sony Pictures for bringing this movie to the world. And Braun Studios and Creative Wealth, a Canadian company that produced and financed this film and Tully, and made the kind of films that are very difficult to make, but are exactly the kind of films that filmmakers like me want to make. So a round of applause for an awesome Canadian company. I have always been curious about flawed characters. You know, the head lobbyist for Big Tobacco, a pregnant teenage girl, a guy who fires people for a living, a woman who's trying to end another couple's marriage. This is my Marvel universe. It's a unique screenplay. It was written by three people. A political journalist who covered many presidential campaigns, the former press secretary for Howard Dean and Hillary Clinton and Bill Clinton, and the son of the guy who directed Ghostbusters. We wanted to create a movie with a dozen points of view on a scandal as it happened in real time over the course of a week. The journalists and the campaign people, young and old, men and women, each trying to do the right thing, trying to figure out what is right and what is relevant. And at the center of which is an enigma. A candidate who had great ideas, but was also a human being, who had flaws and who made mistakes. And in that role, we found an actor whose heart beats out of his chest in roles like Logan and The Greatest Showman. And yet in this role, he does something completely different. It is new and complicated. He plays a character we desperately want to know, and he brings us so close, but he never completely lets us in. The most attractive Australian I've ever met, Hugh Jackman.
Did you hear that, Chris Hemsworth? Liam Hemsworth, Russell, anyway. Hi everybody, it's great to be here. Before I thank Jason, I also want to echo what you said at the beginning. Thank Sony, and I want to thank the man who is the big cheese at Sony, who also happened to be the big cheese at Fox, and he was the man who decided it would be okay to cast a 6'2" Australian, fresh off a West End run of Oklahoma, in the role of Wolverine. Thank you, Tom Rothman. I want to give a shout out. A lot of the cast are here tonight. Just yell out if you're the cast, and yeah, I love you too. I know that's Mark O'Brien. I'm hoping it's Bill Burr, but no, he'll be heckling. Oh. Did you hear any of that? Oh. Bill Burr, was that you? Please tell me it was you, Bill Burr. Probably not. I fucking hate you, Hugh. Anyway. That's love from Bill Burr. Finally, I just want to say to this man, Jason Reitman, this morning I did a press conference in Reitman Square in Toronto. I am in a movie directed by Jason Reitman at the Toronto International Film Festival. I am also from a Commonwealth country. I want my Canadian passport in the mail in the next 2 weeks. Thank you very much. Movie. Thank you so much.
Thank you. I have so many people to bring up here, and I want to get them up here immediately. Our producers, Michael Bugh, Jason Blumenfeld, Helen Esterbrook.
Sorry, take one. Go for it.
Helen Esterbrook, Aaron Gilbert, please come on up. Our costume designer, Danny Glicker. Our composer, Rob Simonson. You can't hear me? Oh.
Take it back.
All right, well, we're going with the dangerous one. My co-writers, Matt Bai and Jay Carson. And our cast. We have a lot of cast. Josh Brenner, Tommy Dewey, Ari Grainer, Mark O'Brien, Sarah Paxton, Molly Ephraim, Steve Zissis, Mamadou Athi, Caitlin Deaver, Chris Coy, Bill Burr, and Hugh Jackman. Hey, guys. Hi, man. That's funny. So fun. Should we all maybe take one step forward and not be so nervous? It's like just coax us. Yeah, no. Mm-hmm. All right.
Well, okay, so while everyone's getting up here, I'll just start by asking you, this film is wonderful and wonderfully, interestingly, stylistically different for you, in a way. And I think part of that is that you've done these films with very, sharp dialogue where it's pointed to go all the way to the end of the line and stop and not have this overlap. But there's so much kind of naturalism and overlap and that kind of technique that comes out of this type of filmmaking. I was hoping you could talk about what are some of the tricks to do that and what is some of the work with the actors to do that.
Well, this is a movie that is asking the audience at all times what is important and what is relevant. And we wanted to do that filmically. And the first time I met Matt Bai and Jay Carson here, my co-screenwriters, we got together and we watched a movie called The Candidate, Robert Redford, and we just knew immediately this is how the style of the movie needs to be. It needs to feel real, and it needs to. What we loved about that movie in particular was that was a film in which innocuous conversations were always happening in the foreground, while important conversations were happening in the background. And so what we wanted to do was give the audience 2, 3, 4 things to be looking at and listening to at all times, so that the cinematic experience is the same as the philosophical experience, which is what is important. All the way down to the final frame of the movie in which we're showing you 2 things and we're asking you as an audience, what do you want to look at? What do you want to listen to?
By the same token, you talk about the philosophical experience. I would wonder from you and from the writers, why was it important to make this film today? What does it say about today?
You want to jump in here? We can all step forward too. It's like we're terrified. I mean, I think we could take them.
I'm afraid of heights, so that's why I don't like to get too close. Thank you. I think. I think everybody knows. I'm a working journalist. I've covered 5 presidential campaigns. Jay was on the arguing side of many of those presidential campaigns with me as an operative. I think we can all agree, something's broken in the system. I mean, we can all disagree about why, but it's not working the way people want it to. They're disappointed, they're frustrated. And, we all bear some responsibility for that. People in my industry and people in Jay's industry, and frankly, voters and consumers of news like our third co-writer, Jason, and all of you. And so this story is about the moment when something goes awry. It's about a moment when things begin to change, and it raises a bunch of questions about what all of our responsibilities are, and asks us to reflect on our experiences, and asks us to reflect on the consequences of our decisions. And in that way, I think it's a story that's very, very relevant to now.
Yeah, if you notice, especially for those of us who spent time in politics, you don't go in, there are no white hats or black hats in this, there are no good guys or bad guys. You see a deeply human story, human beings put in really difficult situations and trying to make the right or the best decision that they can. We tried to live in the gray, as Jason said, in the dialogue and in the writing, to make the world feel really real, and to create a conversation about who's right and who's wrong. That was our goal, at least when we started this.
And by that token, it is the weight of human beings, and there's so many great actors on the stage and great actors in this film. And I wanted to ask about the responsibility of playing those human beings and kind of the preparation in going into their history, starting with you and coming down, if any of you want to chime in.
I'm glad I'm going before Bill. Hello, is this working? Yeah, it's working. It's a great responsibility, one I have never had the opportunity of doing before. I've never played anybody who is alive. I played a couple of people who have passed, but we did a lot of research, Jason and I, with Matt and Jay. I spoke to a lot of the campaign team before I went to Troublesome Gulch. No, before I went, not Troublesome Gulch. Yes, Troublesome Gulch, yeah. Before I went to Troublesome Gulch and stayed with the Harts for a few days, and that was an incredible experience. Everybody who I'd met had described Gary as an enigma, which is a exciting but frightening word for an actor. And I can confirm that is true. I became friends with him. He's incredibly sharp. He's a fascinating man, and meeting him was illuminating in every sense, and also brought home the responsibility we have. Every single person in this room, on this stage, has a story, and you could argue that the story of our lives may be the most precious thing to us. So when you know it someday in the future, the person you're playing and their family are going to sit in a cinema like you are and watch their story being played out, it certainly mattered to me, and I wanted Gary to know that, and I'm sure it's the same for every other actor on the stage. Go on, Bill.
Yeah, I mean, I had like 8 lines in the movie. So I thought it was important playing a Miami reporter to maintain my Boston accent when I did it for authenticity. That's the research that I did. I just tried to keep up with Steven. It was amazing to work with you and everybody else. Thank you.
I guess real quick, I'll just say I did look at Tom Fiedler on some old C-SPAN videos just to get a feel for him, but I wasn't that interested in mimicking him. I was mostly interested in the polarity of that character, which is kind of like a guy that gets sand kicked in his face on the beach a little bit. So he sees this opportunity to crack this story and have a little bit of success and have a victory. At the same time, he is trying to hold someone accountable and make sure that they're being moral and ethical and not lying. So there is that polarity going on. And then finally, ultimately, I think he may have a couple regrets with what actually he helped accomplish. I don't think he necessarily intended on dismantling everything the way he did. So I was trying to capture those three things with that character.
Sorry, I blacked out from fear. I didn't get a chance to meet the real Donna Rice beforehand for research, but I think we had talked about that maybe that wasn't such a good idea.
Well, hold on.
Sorry, I don't know.
The only person who actually spoke to the real person that they were playing was Hugh, who spoke to Gary, and I think it was because of the enormous responsibility of playing that I thought, all right, I'm not going to be able to put everyone in touch with everybody. I did speak to Donna though before we made the movie a few times, and have gotten to know her, and she was actually the first person to see the movie of the real people, and her first remark was how good you were in the movie, frankly, and she loved your performance. And it's actually funny because they've all seen the movie now, and each time each one does see the movie, I presume the conversation is going to be about is being a very emotional experience for them, but they respond like moviegoers. They're like, oh, that was a good movie, and God, Hugh Jackman's a really good actor. But what Donna said was that she appreciated the empathy with which you played her character and the decency that you showed her.
And that's what I was going to say, is that even though we did not speak, I was really happy that I was chosen to portray her story, and that all these years later, she finally got the voice that she never had. So.
I didn't know we were making a movie. I just kind of wandered on set every day. Just very naturalistic in my performance.
Everyone, Mark is from Canada.
Yeah. Newfoundland. Newfoundland?
Whaling turn.
Yeah, they're gonna turn on me. It's all right. No, kind of like what Jason said. We didn't speak with the people, but it was more. I remember early on, I was like, why did they stay with him? Like, why? And you were like, they were just all believed in Gary so much. So I think a lot for the campaign team, it was just like support. And I remember you told me that Gary had said that Billy was like a saint. He was just such a guy, just there for him all the time. So I don't know. That's what I did.
Yeah, I would just add to what everyone else has said that it was important for us, aside from getting the individual person right, developing that organism that is a campaign team. So we use that as an excuse to drink a lot together in the evenings. But it was important in talking to these guys about how, you know, they get into the serious stuff, they get into the muck, but they also have a lot of fun together. They're talking about stuff that has nothing to do with politics. I mean, getting that right as an ensemble, I think, was what, at least for me, made this really special. Mark might not agree. He's sort of he flies solo.
Yeah, I have different opinions. We'll stay around after, and I'll tell you guys how I feel.
Matt played a reporter.
Oh. First of all, that was my first time seeing it, and it's so amazing. Just have to say that. So extraordinary. Playing Anne Devroy, who was the political editor of the Washington Post, felt like, and one of the nation's most incredible and badass journalists, felt like a huge responsibility and honor. And it's funny, I was thinking about the day that we shot the scene in the pantry where I say that incredible line about he's a man with power and opportunity, and that takes a certain amount of responsibility. I had a bit of a breakdown that day because I was so, I just wanted to do right by that scene and by her, and Jason and I had a big conversation about that. Me Too stuff had broken about weeks maybe before we were shooting that, so it was this very fresh moment, and you just think, my God, as a woman, I get to stand here and say, in what will hopefully be a lot of people, the thing that an important thing to hear, and that incredible responsibility and hope to say it in a way that people can hear it. And I just thought that was so beautiful about the movie, that you just understand so much from so many people, and it's just so layered. So I felt so much responsibility and was so scared, but it was just wonderful. Okay.
Yeah, I have played a real person before, and that was incredibly stressful. But this guy, I initially. By the way, Jason, that was incredible.
Why are you so surprised?
The character I played, AJ Parker, is a amalgamation of two reporters, EJ Dion and Paul Taylor, and I initially auditioned for Paul Taylor, but well, Paul Taylor was like a 40-year-old white guy, so I guess we decided to change that. Really? No? Okay. Anyway.
You nailed it.
Thanks, man.
I did not think this was going to go all the way down the line.
We did it just for you.
The real Douglas Wilson offered during shooting to send a pizza to my trailer. That right? He emailed Jason and asked, and Jason said no. And that's pretty much all I have to say. Thanks a lot, man.
Straight to Molly. Okay. They dyed my hair red and glued a beard to my face. And I just let that be my guide.
Yeah. It was beautiful, though. Irene Kelly was another composite of a couple of women who worked for Hart. I did purchase a book by Sue Casey, who is a loyal Hart campaign staffer, that she wrote in '84 after the '84 campaign, called Heart and Soul. And the cover is him with the axe, throwing the axe in the sort of lumberjack outfit, which you saw. And what I got from that was just how much she loved, appreciated, cherished her time working for him, working with his family, her loyalty to that campaign. So I just thought that'd be my guide, yeah.
Oh boy. And, oh God. I got a call from Jason a couple of weeks ago. I was in an Uber and he was like, "Hey, I have Andrea on the phone." And I was like, "Oh, Jesus Christ, I'm so nervous. I haven't talked to her ever." And when I talked to her, it was just so inspiring to hear that she was so happy. She was so happy, and she told me she was honored, and I told her I was honored. And it was really great to hear that and know that, like, that's why I love doing this. That's it.
Yeah, we'll go back the other way. No, I'm going to open it up to the audience. Does anybody have any questions? Is it right here? So the question was, can you speak to the decision of showing journalists making mistakes in their job?
I don't feel like we do. When I look at the journalists in the film, and particularly at the Washington Post, what I was really proud of, and Matt, you could speak to this too, is that we were trying to portray a room that is trying to figure out how to do the right thing. I would imagine in 2018, being a journalist has never been harder, and we were very conscientious of that as we made the movie. And what I liked, and this is really, from your guidance, is that it felt apparently real, and that we did have men and women of all ages trying to figure out how do you tell the story? What happens? And we were trying to explore that idea of what happens when your editor is forcing you to ask a question you don't want to ask. How do you decide in a room when other papers are start to cover something that you don't think is news, when people demand it? I can't imagine how difficult those decisions are.
Yeah, that's a great way to explain it. I do just want to jump in on this. You know, this whole in a way, this whole thing started with a journalistic screw up. You know, which was mine, which was sort of going to see Gary Hart, writing a piece about him for the New York Times Magazine, realizing that I had repeated a lot of misperceptions that were not true, delving deeper into it, and ultimately writing a book, and ultimately the book, turning the book into a movie. Look, I've been a journalist for 20 years. I've covered 5 presidential campaigns. I still write a column. I was at the New York Times for 11 years. My wife's been in TV journalism for 20 years. Our friends are in journalism. I live in Washington. There's no, it's certainly not aimed at journalists. It is aimed at, as I said earlier, I think, getting everybody to reflect on decisions and consequences and responsibilities. And that's operatives and politicians, but it's also us. And we have to reflect, I feel strongly, on decisions that we've made and how that reverberates through our politics and how that reverberates through the culture, and we can't be above that. And so I think we treated journalists as I would want to be treated, which is to be fair but also accountable.
Something I didn't realize going into this movie, and maybe some of you know and some of you didn't know, is that the primary system as it exists in the US really and only goes back to the early to mid 70s. There was, prior to that, candidates were chosen in smoky back rooms and, political conventions. And then there was this moment where this power was put into caucuses and primaries in which people had to vote for who they wanted as a candidate. But we didn't know who the hell these people were, and we needed journalists to do the research and figure that out. And of course, with that responsibility comes the idea of what do we want to know? And that's the big question. I'm like anyone alive today. I'm wondering, how the hell did we get here? And in asking that, I'm thinking about what type of flaws do I really want in my leaders? And I know these are the questions that journalists are asking more than me, and I only have respect for them for doing that job.
We have time for one more. I'm going to go right here on the aisle. So the question was for Mamadou, and it was about how you portrayed your character and also how your character felt about Gary.
Yeah, well, Jason was just very helpful, as you know, he was a creation. But I think the main thing was just he was there's something that the thing that I really loved about the character is his sense of justice. And there was a moment where I actually went over to Jason while we were filming, and I was like, "Hey, Jason, why did you?" I can't believe I asked this, but I was like, "Why did you cast me in this movie?" Do you remember that?
You're the only actor who's ever asked me.
Yeah. Well, I was just curious because I was like, and he said something that also really moved me, but I was like, "Oh wow, you have a really interesting insight." But it was just about morality, and there are times as an actor where you take a job or something where you have to like make a decision and based on what you want to put out there in the world, and like there was a kind of a dichotomy that AJ had, where he's like, this is a journalistic opportunity that can make my career, but also this could ruin this man's career, and also ruin the future of the United States. And that was something that I just decided like really hone in on. Like, there's a moral dilemma here. What's good for me and what's good for the greater good? I don't know but it's also the thing that's good for the greater good may not be because of these moral failings. So it's just that was a real battle in my mind as the movie went on. Did I answer your question?
And that is what we wanted at the end of the day. Our presumption and our hope is that everyone in the theater tonight experienced this film differently. We hope that you walk out and get into huge arguments over what you just saw. But for now, thank you for coming out tonight.